It's one playoff game, right? We can't go out there and come to any conclusions because of one playoff game. If you had seen the video we made most previously on this YouTube channel, we talked about Game 1 of the Caps versus the Habs. And ultimately, the Habs ended up losing in overtime after scoring 2 goals in the last few minutes of regulation to tie things up 2-2 and give themselves a chance in overtime. But in this video, instead of talking straight up just about the game itself, I wanted to dive into some extra talking points about some of the guys on the team. The Habs, that is. We're not talking about the Capitals. They're 1-0 in the series. They're doing okay. But I wanted to talk about Ivan Demidov and some extra discussion points that have been brought up ever since the conclusion of yesterday's game. And I also wanted to talk about Patrik Laine, because that conversation has been percolating a bunch over the past few hours post Game 1 of Montreal-Washington. Let's start this conversation off by looking at the NHL Hockey Stats Cards game score. Because during yesterday's game, the worst line for the Canadiens by far was the line of Demidov, Newhook, and Patrik Laine. These 3 guys were 3 of the 4 worst players that the Habs had in the game against Washington. Now, Laine did have some positive offensive productivity in this game, primarily boosted by his offense and, I would assume, the one-timers that he had on the power play. But in terms of team defense above average, Laine, Newhook, and Demidov were by far the worst line. And I'll be honest here, I didn't make the post-game video yesterday after seeing this post. I was just kind of going off of my immediate instinct. You know, Ovechkin scored the overtime goal and I immediately pressed the record button. But I said in the video yesterday, I was like, yeah, I wasn't really impressed with Ivan Demidov. Sure, he had a centering pass or 2. Sure, he protected the puck along the boards in the early parts of the game. But he didn't have a good game. And that was reflected in the ice time. That was reflected in the deployment. It's something that I think he might be used to, getting benched and not being utilized in important games. But still, this is not like the KHL, where Ivan Demidov is above and beyond the best player on the team offensively. This was a game when Game 1 against the Washington Capitals squad that was out to get Montreal. They were bringing the boom. They were making plays. Sammy Montembeault had to make some big saves. And Demidov was on the worst line of the game. Now, this post, the Hockey Stat Cards game sheet, was posted on the Our Canadiens subreddit, and I wanted to go out there and talk about some of the comments diving into this line. Folks are going out there and saying that it was really bad. There were people going out there and suggesting some more combinations here. This commenter, Dave from Gabe, says that if you put Demidov on the Evans line and Heineman on the Newhook line, it brings more balance to the bottom 6, possession, finesse, and physicality on each line, swapping around just one guy from Demidov to Armia with Evans and Heineman with Laine and Newhook. Another comment goes out there and says this: Alex Newhook plays alone. Super speed, no IQ. If it doesn't work, he skates faster, but that's about it. Laine's reaction times are slow and he's a generally sloppy player. Demidov didn't, or barely even touched the puck. Demidov is still adapting to the NHL level of play. To start with a playoff game against the Capitals is not easy. And that, of course, is true. I think we need to dive into it and say, yeah, Demidov is playing his 3rd National Hockey League game. And it's in the gosh darn Stanley Cup Playoffs against the best team in the East. That's not going to be easy, and he's not going to look great right away. Ultimately, though, it's one game, and I think it's unfair to make some really big conclusions after one game, but I think it's also fair to acknowledge that Ivan Demidov in particular, him and his line, they were not good yesterday. Newhook, in particular, just seeing his game develop in the way that it had over the past few months here, I'm not surprised that Newhook plays a lot more like a chicken with his head cut off type of guy, you know, he just skates fast and really drives forward. He's a north-south guy with some pretty good hands, but some tunnel vision at the same time. The reason I'm not surprised is because when Alex Newhook was draft eligible, this was more or less the profile that you saw out of this guy. Not necessarily the tunnel vision and the inability to create on the fly. He was actually a lot better at doing that at younger levels of play, like in the BCHL. But Alex Newhook mostly commanded the game with his speed. Back in the 2019 NHL Draft season, we made videos saying that, hey, if you're looking for a Jack Hughes light, if you're looking for a Connor McDavid or a Nathan MacKinnon light, if you think of McDavid and MacKinnon as an A-plus caliber player, Alex Newhook could be like a B or a B- level in that same mold, where he dictates the game with his speed, with his crossovers, with his skating ability, with the puck on his stick. That's how he drives offense. Jack Hughes, McDavid, MacKinnon, they all roughly play hockey the same way, where the primary element that allows them to take advantage over others is their speed, and their speed when handling the puck. Newhook was like that when he was in the BCHL, and it's why he was a first-round talent. It's just now he hasn't necessarily developed the IQ to keep up with the feet that he's got that are always moving at 110%. And we're seeing now that it doesn't really work all too well when you have a more slower and precision timing-based player like Patrik Laine and an Ivan Demidov whose hockey IQ is still getting adjusted to NHL ice and the Stanley Cup playoffs. So this is not a good video about Ivan Demidov, but ultimately it is one where we can look at it and say, hey, there still is a lot to learn for this guy. At the very least, he's got 3 more Stanley Cup playoff games this season, and that's assuming the Montreal Canadiens lose all of them. 3 games of playoff experience against a team that could be a favorite in the East is not bad. And ultimately, if the Canadiens do end up winning a game, which, look, I'm going to be honest, I think is a lot more possible now after seeing Game 1, all the Habs need is just 5 minutes of gosh darn energy. They're like Sabrina Carpenter up in here. They can do a lot with 15 minutes. And if that's all it takes to tie a game up, potentially even get the win, then who knows how difficult this series is going to be for the top team in the Eastern Conference in Washington. Montreal is not going to make it easy. And when the Caps do start getting their chances and their opportunities piling up on each other like they had in the first and the second periods of yesterday's game, Sammy Montembeault is in net. So I guess as long as each of these Canadiens aspects pulls their weight, Montembeault makes the saves, Suzuki and Caulfield score the clutch goals, Lane Hutson gets points, although, to be fair, he did say that he wasn't really great last night, which I will have to partially agree with. There were some errors that Hutson did make, which led to Washington goals, but at the same time, Hutson had 2 points, so we can't be too upset with the way that he played yesterday. Ultimately, though, that Newhook-Demidov-Laine trio does need a little bit of work, and whether or not you think that comes in the form of moving Demidov to a different line, playing him with Armia and Evans, 2 guys who have a little bit more hockey IQ, I would say, just in the way they're able to understand the game around them. They are less reliant on a blistering shot or a blistering set of feet, and more reliant on just an all-around smart game. Can Ivan Demidov benefit from that? I don't know. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.